join me to welcome our first speaker, Sophie Punte, Executive Director of the Clean Air Initiative for Asian City Center, to give the welcome remarks.
Good morning, everybody. I'm nervous and excited. I don't know which one dominates right now, but I'm extremely honored to be here in Singapore, and I'm very grateful for the Minister, Dr. Ibrahim, and all my friends at the National Environment Authority and the Land Transport Authority to have made this conference possible, and of course to all the delegates who've come to the BAQ conference. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of why we're actually doing this conference and why CAI-Asia is really focusing on better air quality in livable cities. I'm not sure how the next slide goes. I don't have a clicker. Okay, while I wait for the clicker. Just for those who are not familiar with the Clean Air Initiative, the Clean Air Initiative is really a partnership of 200 organizations spread around the world, but mostly obviously based in Asia. We have 8 country networks in China, India, Indonesia, Nepal, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Philippines, and now I have to think about which other ones, Indonesia. And we have, of course, an NGO that is registered in the Philippines, which is the CAI-Asia Center. And it's thanks to them that we've really been able to do this conference. We started in 2001, set up by the Asian Development, World Bank, and USAID. And obviously these organizations who were the founding fathers of the Clean Air Initiative have been very important to us throughout the years and are still very critical partners to us. So now we have actually registered with the UN as a type 2 partnership. The real reason why we have been established is to address the very serious air pollution in many of Asia's cities. As you can see on this slide, we have done a review of 230 cities across Asia, and we're finding that about 60% of the cities are still not within reach of the World Health Organization interim targets for particulate matter, as you can see on this graph. And only 1% of the cities can really say that their air is clean. Now obviously our host city, Singapore, is in those top bars, but many other cities, especially those in countries where industry and transport is rapidly growing and where the economic is still needing to pick up, those are the ones that are most affected. So whether you live in Hong Kong, China, or in Manila, Philippines, or in Delhi, India, or in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, you will see severe air pollution everywhere. Now how it affects people varies. Many people, the most common thing that people tell me is about asthma, that they say, I moved to the city and my son all of a sudden has a lot of asthma problems. About 4 to 7% of people are suffering from asthma, which is actually quite a common illness. And asthma is being aggravated, or it can even, air pollution can even lead to an onset of asthma in adults, in particular those who might be sporting or living a long time in the city already. Another one is that, for example, in the city of Guangzhou, China, researchers found that more people die from cancer, lung cancer caused by air pollution than from smoking. And that is not because very few people smoke. Smoking is actually quite common here in Asia still. Or that you have athletes where at some times of the year in cities people are advised, please do not exercise so much. And when you get to a situation where people are actually told not to exercise because exercise might be bad for their health, we really know that the air pollution situation is serious. And finally, there's many people who either live close to roads, work on roads, whether it's vendors, policemen, and often poor people have no other choice but to live close to main highways and slums, and they have no means to protect themselves from air pollution. Plus, they're the ones who can least afford the medical bills the moment they do get any serious illness caused by air pollution. So what are the causes? Obviously, one of the main causes that is often overlooked when we look at the sky outside is indoor air pollution. It's the one that is most seriously affecting the health of women. So this woman is in Sri Lanka, for example, and many women in developing countries die prematurely because of indoor air pollution. Of course, industry is another big factor, and industry is often a problem because there's so many other chemicals and toxics that are associated with industry that enter in our atmosphere. Likewise, transport is the main contributor and the fastest growing in Asia. Also, it is the sector where most people are exposed to. So what you see is people, although maybe transport can be varying anywhere between, say, 30% of the air pollution to 70% in Manila, because people live closer to roads and travel on roads, the exposure to the air pollution from transport is relatively higher than compared to other sources. And finally, we have open burning, and this is still a big problem. It's one, the slash and burn practices to create new agricultural land, but also the open burning of waste in backyards, and it's still very common. Whether you're in Jakarta or whether you're in Colombo, very often when you could go flying in, you see the little fires everywhere around the city. Now, this one is the link between air pollution and climate change. The most recent years we've seen enormous growth in the focus on climate change, and we're really pleased to see that because it actually puts also a lot of the emphasis on the environment. But what people often forget is it's not just about CO2. We see a development of whether it's funds or whether it's donor focus, and even now more and more national policies that are very CO2 centric. And I'd like to draw your attention to this. Black carbon or soot that is coming, for example, from cooking or from a bus like this is actually causing the local climate to warm up. Why? Because black absorbs the heat. Similarly, dust can travel very far. It can reach as far as the Himalayas. And when the Himalayas, and that's really happening now, when the snow gets a little bit darker because of the dust that settles, it accelerates the melting process. So what we're finding is, although CO2 has a very long impact, so like hundreds of years ahead, and definitely should be brought down, a real opportunity for the coming decades is black carbon, because it has a very short, immediate impact. So if we want to do about climate change in the next decades, let's not forget about black carbon. The good news is that many sources, such as buses or trucks, have the fuel that they burn cause both air pollution as well as CO2. So many of the options exist that can address both. Now, this is one that we'd like to share with you. This is a magazine from 1925. And it's a city as they envisioned in 1950. So now mind you, we're now in 2010, 60 years after that. And obviously they've been thinking about high-rise buildings. And you see up there is the aircraft landing space, and there's still the Zeppelin in the top. So they hadn't thought of airplanes as much yet. How may you live? But the one thing I like, people first, the pedestrians are on top. Yeah, so let's keep that in mind. So they got that thing right. So that makes us to think that if we look at better air quality, we cannot achieve that unless we really rethink the way our cities are being built. Right now what often happens is a new city is being built, roads are developed first, then the buildings come, maybe some sidewalks, cycling is often forgotten, and before you know it, you have an enormous energy intensive city that has no way out but to create emissions. We really need to rethink the way we develop cities. The good news is, again, that we have in Asia already many examples of livable cities. The unfortunate thing is they're very spread around. Every city might have one or two examples, but very few cities have actually thought of this in an integrated way. Let me give you some examples. What we want is a transport of a city that is centered around people, not around cars. Here you see the car-free day in Jakarta. It started as an initiative, I believe, every month. It's now every 2 weeks. Other cities in Indonesia have started to adopt it. And people actually start understanding the concept of what it means to own the street again, like was the case in the old days before it was motorized. Of course, we need cars and we need our vehicles to move around, but it's about bringing the balance back to make sure that people who want to walk or cycle or just kids wanting to play on the street again can do so. Then, what is also important is that the traffic is segregated. Here in Punte, India, there has been a lot of investment made in cycling tracks around the city that really encourages people to bike, rather than being mixed up in traffic with enormous safety concerns. And then we don't all need to move to high-rises. Here's an example of Marikina, which is actually part of Manila with about 12 million people, where people actually might have a block of five stories. So you don't all need to move to the very extreme high-rises, but you can have medium-built cities, which are actually quite pleasant to live, yet are compact. Similarly, this is the National Library here in Singapore, just around the corner. It won 2 years ago, in 2007, the award for energy efficiency from the ASEAN. And it's a typical building that has really brought in the concept of energy efficiency. And it's actually a very pleasant building to be in. Now, I want to live in a city where I work in a building where I actually feel pleasant and I feel that I'm in a natural environment. Then, of course, we want also very good public transport systems. This system in Guangzhou, China, was opened just earlier this year. It's the biggest in Asia so far, and it's really, as you can see, it's pushed cars to the side. It is quicker to cross the same corridor by bus now than by car, and that's exactly the intent. If people want to continue driving the car, that's fine, but you have to make sure that people who want to take the bike or the public transport system move faster. A lot of people, it's about time, not about money. So, also, what is increasingly happening is that you try and see the feeder systems to the transport system. So that when people leave their homes, they can immediately get on the bike or they're within walking distance from the public transport. And Singapore is such a city where actually people, I think about 60% of the people live within a kilometer or so from a public transport station. Now that's exactly where you start thinking about a people-centric transport system. And then, of course, pedestrian zones, you've seen them popping up all over Asia. And I really encourage cities to think with pedestrian zones in mind when they develop the cities, not think of it as something in hindsight. And I just understand from New York that by making Broadway pedestrianized, it's really increased the value of properties. So imagine if you have a pedestrian zone like this, how much more clientele these shops will have. It's actually economically something that makes economic sense. And then of course we want parks. Here in Thailand there's a huge park called the Lumpini Park right in the middle of the center. You can run around it, it's about 5 kilometers, and it's used so enormously much. Of course it would bring in more money if you would put in buildings there, but it has actually made that city a pleasant city to live in because you can access that park so quickly. And in Bangkok there are several parks like this spread around. So what needs to happen in order to achieve that? We've developed a model for urban development where we're looking at, first you need to start visioning what city you really want to live in. Let's imagine, let's dare to believe that yes, we can have a city that we all want to be in, and you spend more time in the city because it's nice to be there. You're not trying to get home as quick as possible because it's not nice. Also our belief is that a livable city cannot exist unless it's a low emission city, both low carbon, low air pollution. So what we developed is this model where we're looking at how can you develop a city with policies and actions in place that encourage low emissions, and with that comes a great degree of livability and sustainability. Obviously you need the analysis, and here's where often the development agencies come in to help with, and the banks come in to help with identifying the financial resources for that, and obviously the implementation. So finally, we cannot do this alone. We need your help, and I'm therefore again very, very grateful that you're all here. I want to thank our partners, obviously, National Environment Agency, Land Transport Authority, Asian Development, World Bank, Singapore Transport Board, all our sponsors and our supporting organizations. CAI-Asia owes its success to working in partnership with others. The third element of the theme, air quality and climate change, is about the changing role of stakeholders. And my conviction is that the biggest change that we're going to see is that the only way we can address the critical and growing issues here in Asia is by working in partnerships. The problems are simply too big to do it on our own. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.